Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Jack Unterweger, and in part 3 we're picking up where Jack has hit the road. He's on the run with his then girlfriend. I'm joined by my guest, Will Neff. Will, Jack hits the road.
He does.
He's nowhere to be found. Austrian police are looking for him. They've tipped off the United States authorities, who now know who the culprit is for their Los Angeles triple murders. And he flees, and he thinks at this point that he can still get the sympathy of the Austrian people. He doesn't really know that this is it for him, and I have a clip right now of his girlfriend explaining what the mindset was when they went on the run.
He broke down and told me that he was wanted for the murder of 10 prostitutes. He kept saying it wasn't me, it wasn't me. How could they think it was me? I was pretty shocked, but I wanted to believe him at the same time.
Aber gleichzeitig glauben, ich wusste im Moment gar nicht einmal, was zu tun ist.
I didn't know what to do. I only knew that I didn't want to go through it on my own, because I was afraid of what would happen to me. I told him we should either drive back to Vienna together, or I would go with him wherever he wanted to go.
Egal wohin fährt, ne?
So this is really a girl that stands by her man, because something that we haven't talked about yet, but I think we should discuss, is that she was 18 when she was dating Jack, who was significantly older than her.
Yes.
And he had already tried to prostitute her out, use her as an escort, and he'd also submitted her as an exotic dancer to a bunch of different clubs. This was a difficult relationship. This was an abusive relationship, but it doesn't really sound like she realized that it was abusive. I think that she was also caught up in his charm that so many people said was infectious.
Right, and I think this is why Unterweger makes his way into the higher tiers of violent criminal, insane sociopath, is because he's not just a guy that's going out and clubbing people on the head or strangling them. There's so much more. He almost has this Manson-like element where he's mind controlling women into paying for his lifestyle, so much so that he takes his girlfriend and essentially puts her into prostitution to pay for his lifestyle on the run. I mean, the amount of mind fucking you need to do for a girl to be like, oh, my boyfriend's a murderer and I gotta fuck dudes to pay for him, all in a woman's work. You know, he's like, that's some deep level mind control bullshit. And
well, he takes her from Austria, they go to Paris, Paris to Canada, New York to Miami, which is where they end up. And along the way, they are in touch with some of their friends back in Austria, because he was a beloved character in Austria. He calls into the Austrian media to plead for his innocence after the warrant is out. People know that this guy is tied to, at this point, I believe it was 9 murders that they had tied him to. It would eventually come up to about 11.
And he creates a very Trump-esque defense, right? He's like, obviously the media is just trying to pin this on me. This is lazy police work. They're just trying to frame me. Ignore the evidence, ignore the piles of evidence.
But Will, how did the Austrian people respond to that? A lot of people bought it.
They bought it. They were about half in, half out.
They knew a lot. Some people were rooting for him to keep running.
Yes.
Some people were saying, yeah, obviously the police didn't have any leads in the case and they're just tying it to the easiest guy. This very, I would say infamous or famous at that time celebrity who was famous for being a rehabilitated criminal. It's so easy, like I can't believe the media is doing this to him.
Right. How could this charming guy in a white suit
who's
have ever killed
pleading
anybody?
his case?
Yes.
And he even says, if I could just, if they would drop the charges and if I was allowed, then I would come back and I would explain everything.
Right.
You know, these sort of odd, they're not really threats, but they're not really promises either. But he is apprehended February 27th, 1992 in Miami when they're going to accept a wire transfer from his girlfriend's mother.
From an ex-girlfriend.
Oh, from an ex-girlfriend.
From an ex-girlfriend. He's with his girlfriend, calls an ex, he's like, I need some money to live my life, my lavish lifestyle. And because that's apparently the story, is that he had become accustomed to living a very lavish lifestyle and they were basically out of money. And so he hit up an ex and was like, can you wire transfer me some money? So they were waiting for him at the
Yeah, it wasn't, I mean, for a guy with such a crazy story, it comes to an end pretty rapidly, kind of comes to a standstill because the FBI is right there.
Right.
And they are ready to apprehend him. And then he decides that he wants to be extradited to Austria because he could be tried in Los Angeles and he could be tried in Austria.
Yes.
And he knows that the death penalty is on the table if he stays in LA, which is kind of strange that he elects that he would rather go back to Austria, maybe plead his case there. He thinks maybe he could even get off.
Yes.
Because he has the public admiration there still. So June 28th, 1994, he is sentenced to life without parole. But this is a guy who is found guilty of 9 murders, likely 11, who has sworn that he will never spend another day behind bars because he already did 15 years.
Right.
So, well, let's take a look right now at Jack's final act of evil or death or murder, all of them. Take a look.
A jury in Graz, Austria found Johann Jack Unterweger guilty of 9 of the murders. The remaining victims were found too badly decomposed to convict Unterweger beyond a reasonable doubt. The verdict meant life in prison to a man who swore he would never spend another day behind bars. And he never did. Unterweger strangled himself with a nylon cord stripped from his uniform.
We normally think of suicide as coming from depression or someone who feels shame or guilt or remorseful in some way. This is not at all what was going on when Jack committed suicide. More psychopathic offenders like Jack do it to exert control. And it's the last great defiant act that he exercised to wrest control of this situation away from the government, away from the authorities.
So, Will, tell me a little bit about why Jack hanging himself was so remarkable. What was noticeable about this scene that he left?
Okay, here you go. If you don't think that this man belongs with the greats, the Gacy's, the Bundys, the Mansons of the world, this is one of the best sign-offs, arguably the best sign-off of any serial killer ever. This guy hangs himself, but uses the fucking knot that he's used to strangle all these women on himself. What an unbelievable nom de plume final chapter. Yes, I did it. Fuck you all. See you in the next life moment. I mean, unbelievable, crazy, psychopathic, and kind of fucking elegant.
It makes me so fucking mad that in his final act, he did take control. He never was able to be held responsible truly for what he did because he took his own life in his own hands in his own way.
Yeah.
And that's what's so frustrating because he never paid for what he did.
No.
And now I think we should talk a little bit about the themes that Jack's story brings up. And I think a major theme is, does Jack's story influence your opinion on criminal rehabilitation and reform? Because he was held up as a beacon of what the system could do, what he could become. He was lauded as an intellectual, as a brilliant, poetic writer.
So I would say this does not dampen my hope for criminal rehabilitation whatsoever.
Okay.
I think that as we move into the future, more money, more time, more effort should be put into rehabilitation because so many people are in the American penal system, and I think we really can help them. Why is my spirit not dampened by Unterweger? Because Jack Unterweger was a fucking monster. He is not a human being as we know them. His human skin, his human visage just happens to be one of a human being. This man is genetically, mentally, spiritually different than you and I will ever be. I might shoplift some peanuts. Jack Unterweger will strangle you for those peanuts because he doesn't view human beings as human beings. And this is why it was so easy for him to appear reformed. He's the type of person who could look at, this is what they want from me, so I will be this person today. He is an American Psycho 7, horror movie level villain.
Yeah, and what I would say to that effect as well is I remember very distinctly when you told me about this guy.
Yes.
And I think it was when I was discussing with you when we lived together early on, I have this idea for a show about murder. Maybe I could film it like a YouTube show.
Right.
And you were like, oh, you should really look into this guy's story. And I remember when you told me sort of the 3 or 4 sentences of his case that I didn't believe it. Because I thought that it sounded like a movie and maybe you were getting your information from a movie that you had thought to be based on a true story. And to find out that all of this down to his death with the same ligature that was used to convict him was all true.
Yes.
It just leaves such an unsettling feeling in my stomach that monsters like this are real and that they existed and they got their way.
And the craziest part is the reason that Jack isn't heralded with the greats, with the serial killers that we are afraid of, is the way that the Austrian appeal system works is you are not found guilty until your appeals are over. So on paper, Jack only committed 1 murder. The murder he committed when he was 18 years old. So technically, this man is not a serial killer by the definition that he was found guilty of 3 or more crimes over a period of 3 or more months. He's just a solo killer. So he's a guy that even slipped kind of this onerous, honor that these people own. But in my mind, he is the most evil. He's the worst. He has all the characteristics and traits of the worst of the worst. And he kind of slipped the noose by putting himself in the noose, right? Like, never had to answer for a goddamn thing. Not only that, he basically got to say, yeah, I fucking did it without actually being found fully guilty yet, which is
all right.
Well done.
All right, guys, we want to hear from you in the comments section below. Had you heard about Jack Unterweger before? Do you think that he is one of the most evil? Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next time on Murder with Friends.